Well, as I cruise across country, I'm entering Batavia, New York, all the way from Fayetteville, Arkansas, down in the hog country. We are interviewing today Ty Muse, CEO of Visions Federal Credit Union.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready whenever you guys are.
All right, Tyler, you ready?
Oh, I guess so, man. Let's do it.
All right, let's have some fun, fellas. Timeout. Tyler, who are we taking a timeout with today?
Oh, well, thank you, Kevin. Well, as I cruise across country, I'm entering Batavia, New York, all the way from Fayetteville, Arkansas, down in the hog country. We are interviewing today Ty Muse, CEO of Visions Federal Credit Union. And Ty, I'm coming up from the filthy, dirty South right now, and I heard you on a podcast today. What part of the South are you from originally?
Yeah, I'm originally from North Carolina. I don't know if you guys know a little place called Chapel Hill or Duke or in Durham, Raleigh, North Carolina. Oddly enough, growing up there, I was not a Duke fan, though. I was definitely not a Duke fan. But it is funny when you think about what is the South these days. I wouldn't throw Fayetteville out there unless you're talking about Fayetteville, North Carolina, the original Fayetteville. Yes.
Yeah, I remember back in '94 when we had to take those Duke Blue Devils down. My Nolan Richardson Razorbacks tore up Grant Hill, Cherokee Park, Santonio Lang, and all that. But glory days right there.
Yes, I will tell you, I was actually rooting for him too, man. I think at the time he might have been the first African-American head coach to win, right? So I remember that was like really big news at the time. Yeah.
Wow. That's I'm a Kentucky fan, so I hate Duke, the Christian Laettner days. That's obvious. But I got to ask, because I know a personal relationship that you have with Jay Williams.
Yeah.
How does a Duke hating Chapel Hill resident become good friends with Jay Williams?
It's funny, and you're going to laugh. I'll throw in one more little curveball. I'm also John Calipari as well. I go and play his basketball camp as well in the summers, and it's hard to root for them too. But basically, as long as it has blue, I just try in my head to imagine it's a different color of blue, and I get away with it. Now, being raised in the Northeast after moving from the South, I'm a Syracuse fan through and through, if I'm being 100% honest.
Okay.
But with that said, yeah, I didn't really bring it up in the beginning. It was just more, I was playing basketball at a basketball camp. I call them fat guy camps, but they're for older guys with a little bit of money who still want to play basketball and hang out with celebrities. And I was at Dwayne Wade's camp, and that's where I got to meet Dwayne Wade and his family down in Miami. And this was just right after LeBron left. And while playing, and you can't make this up, Jaime Foxx, the actor, singer, Oscar award winner, is guarding me. I'm on a break. I pull up on a jump shot, and I tear my Achilles. It literally pops right there. I land. I'm on the ground. He kicks me. He goes, "Get up! You know you're faking." He goes, "You're just mad that you missed the shot." I go, "No, I think I'm hurt." And Jay Will was our commissioner of our league. And so it's funny how, like, when something bad happens, all you think about is like all the bad stuff. But it became like a differentiator. I was that guy that everyone's like, "Oh, he's the guy who got hurt," or "Oh, he's the guy, he was like, messing around with Jamie Foxx." But after that, Jay kept reaching out to me just to see how I was doing, And over that time, he finally kind of cracks the shell. He's like, "You don't realize it, but you're probably depressed. Like you're just sitting here thinking about this great time. You go out there, you're starting to realize you're getting older. You can't do what you want to do." And I started telling him, like, about all this. And then at the end, like, he's really quiet. And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, like, I forgot. Like, his career was ended on a freak thing on a motorcycle." And I'm thinking, wow, like, I'm over complaining about a little Achilles tendon. This guy's recalibrated his whole life to be amazingly successful. They still remain relevant. And me, this little weekend warrior, gets hurt, winds up with the best story of all time that Jamie Foxx is guarding me when I take this shot. And by the way, Jamie Foxx would appreciate this. He went on to win the tournament, which I'm pretty sure we would have won if I didn't get hurt. Not because of me, but because of me. I think we would have had an opportunity. So ultimately, that kind of camaraderie, just the fact that this guy, for no financial reason, kept reaching out to check in up on me. And then we started talking about his life and what he wanted to do. I was talking about what I'm trying to do. And there were so many connectors we said, what if we just work together for 2 years, helping each other, me providing you collateral and you providing awareness. Because if Jay says the same thing I would say, people would listen, kids would listen when he tells his story because he has an amazing story. And oddly enough, I was fortunate enough to have his book behind me that he autographed and everything. So I guess what's really cool about him now, it'll be like every other year or so or year, he'll pop in through each other's lives through mutual passings where one of my friends will send him a message or he'll send me a message or out the blue, he'll check in on a business opportunity. So I'm super proud of the guy. Look what he's doing. Yeah. He's doing amazing things, and he had this all written out. I mean, it's hard to believe that's almost 6-7 years ago, but we were talking about what he wanted to do and getting beyond basketball, and he's really on his way.
Wow.
He's a New Jersey guy too.
He was one of the guys who made being smart kind of cool.
Right. I mean,
I remember reading through that ESPN magazine back when there were magazines, and it was all about him, his GPA at Duke, kids looking up to him in the classroom. Yeah. And then the podcast I just heard you on, Ty, you were the same kind of way, it sounded like. You
used to hide that,
behind the laughter. But who inspired you to be like the cool guy and the freaking smart dude all at the same time, and to make it cool?
I appreciate that. My kids would probably disagree with the cool factor, but so one of the things I've been doing in COVID, I'm just a person who just winds up meeting people. And Kobe Bryant was always one of those people I wanted to meet. And right after his passing, I just happened to be flying to LA, and I didn't get to meet him, obviously. And I had made a decision I was going to go out my way to try to meet all my idols. And so for me, it was Dr. J. Dr. J was that first dude that was amazing athlete, but we thought he was really smart because he was a doctor, right? At the time, not realizing he wasn't a real doctor. And learning how he got his nickname, but I thought he was an actual doctor. So I actually reached out to him and I scheduled, he let me record it and I got to share it with my staff. And it was all kind of his points on leadership, because he actually got his degree in leadership. And I think he was surprised I knew that. I knew a lot about him. He let me kind of interview him for about an hour. We kind of cut it down for an internal podcast for my staff that they were using. And he just kind of talked about the things he thought were important in life and how to lead and when to lead and when to listen. And I think for me, that was the moment when I just saw this dude as cool as can be, the big fro, the fur jackets, the swag, and he was smart too. I could be that guy. Yeah. You know what I mean? I want to be that guy. I don't want to be the other version of a dumb jock, right? But I definitely hit it most of the 80s when I was growing up. It wasn't cool to be smart back then until Will Smith came along and others. But it was not cool growing up in Newburgh, New York, being the smart kid. So,
so you talk about I know you're a bit of a history buff, and we kind of look at individuals' lives after they've passed, right? And kind of judge them on their legacy. You kind of went through your own transition or evolution yourself, as you talked about in that podcast. And you talked about your initial dream of Ty was to own your own bodega. And now here you are sitting as the CEO of, I always say, is one of the staples of what a true culture can be for an organization and how that can fuel them forward. I always use you as that shiny toy, if you will, in Southern New York. I'm from Elmira originally, and that's something that's kind of unique or different in the Southern tier, because it was only the employers that were there. Employees were lucky to be working for these employers. In your own evolution, right, when it was Bodega, Small Dreams, and now you're the CEO, how did you talk yourself, or how did you find yourself through that own evolution of your individual ideas?
It's funny, I don't know if you guys are fans of comedians, but Kevin Hart is obviously the biggest one right now. But before Kevin Hart was a guy named Cat Williams, and you both
love Cat
on
Williams.
The cusp of growing up that you should have enough videos of him. And I'm a huge Cat Williams fan, and he's also my list of people I'm hoping to meet one day. I'm going to sit down and chop it up with. But Cat Williams said, you have to be your own number one fan. You have to be your fan of yourself first, right? Mm-hmm. And my parents just lied to me as a young man. They just told me I could be anything I wanted to be, and I thought they were telling the truth. And I just literally thought like, oh, my mom and dad said I could be anything I wanted to be. So why not? Not realizing all the barriers that were there because they didn't really focus on that. It's funny how focus is. If you focus on what you can't do, you 9 times out of 10 wind up circling back down the toilet bowl to the things you can't do. But when you focus on the things you can do and find a way to get paid at doing what you can do and what you do well, then everything else seems to be really, really easy. I don't spend a lot of time worrying about things I can't control. I don't really spend a lot of time worried about things that we're like either can't control or just are beyond my ability. I just focus on the things I have the ability to impact, and I start working there. And then in the day, if you just try to do good, it seems to always work out to be the right spot you're supposed to be in. We did this thing literally on the back of a napkin. A buddy of mine just texted me while I was on vacation last week in Hawaii, and he said, hey, I just want to let you know, we're getting interviewed over this thing we created called Luma here in downtown Binghamton. And it literally happened by him just sitting there across from me with a napkin and just writing down different ideas. Like, I told him, share some ideas of things you're working on. And he named one. I was like, yeah, now tell me the one you didn't really want to tell me because you thought there's no way I would support it. And he pulled out this thing, and I don't even know if it was called Luma. It might have been called Lumens or something back then. And now it's so crazy that 50,000 people come to this city every year to see this light show where we project up on these buildings. I'm just so proud of him and his partner, Tice, and the whole community that came together. It has nothing to do with Ty. It has nothing to do with anything. I don't know anything about lumens. I don't know anything about projections. I know very little about art at the time. I don't even think I knew a lot about Binghamton. I've only been here a couple of years. But I did know that I thought of some cool stuff that I wanted to see. And so let's just try to do something that was kind of cool or good, right? It makes your life really simple when you focus on that, and just trying to do good things. And, there's a book called The One Thing that I kind of always go back to, that if everyone around you just try to do one good thing, that would be thousands and thousands of good things. And the cumulative impact of that would be a tsunami of positivity around this world. So as I run my company, I think the same thing. I don't need to come up with all the ideas. If I can come up with one and the other 730 some odd people can come up with one, we could definitely continue to be the best organization in this other tier.
Wow. Yeah. And I know too, is you mentioned sports, right? Sports and business. How many parallels do you find? Because you mentioned you're 6'4", so basketball is pretty much what everybody else said. Well, Ty's future is basketball, but then you had a 50-inch vertical and found yourself pretty damn good at track too.
Yeah.
But it can almost be a dream that a lot of people chase for almost too long, right? When did you decide, or what, I guess, parallels have you found in sports and business?
Oh, I feel like they're the same. One, there's nothing like winning. I can't explain how much I love winning in all things. But I did learn and realize I love winning in a team environment more. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You ever guys ever go to a casino and play on a crap table?
Yeah.
You guys like craps? So like you can go to a casino and pull a lever and win once. It kind of feels cool. But have you ever noticed where all the noise comes in a casino?
Yeah, the crap table, because it's a little teamwork.
Yeah, you're all playing, and there's always the one guy who comes and bets against the table.
Yeah.
And he becomes the enemy at the table, but it's the same way. That is what I look at, like when I'm at my company. It is like this momentum of winning together. And then in the credit union world is even more special because you're working for your membership. So when we win, they win, we win. It's symbiotic that way. But sports taught me the most about, man, as much as you learn about winning, you learn about losing. And I often wonder, in this kind of world that we're kind of migrating to, of participation, it's good to participate, but when you run into a real bully or you run into some real competition, will participating be enough? You need to build this strategy to how to win. I mean, ultimately, isn't that really what a strategy is? I mean, if you're working on a strategy and it's the same as everyone else's strategy, you're not making a game plan to win. Like your game plan to win is the strategy. And there's something fulfilling about having a plan and going out there and executing There's also when you lose to someone who's better. I'm one of those guys that I would rather go out and lose to Michael Jordan than go out and beat a 5-year-old every day. So it's not about making 10 layups in a row. It's about making that one half court shot after you miss 9 and you make the one and you celebrate. It's like, sports are another thing. It's just the practice behavior too. Like what I loved about basketball, I loved about track, is that when you're putting in that work and you start seeing it pay off, that moment, or in basketball, it would be the dunk. I went up to, I remember just trying to dunk like all summer. And you guys, I don't know if you've ever got there. Finally,
I can just touch the rim, Ty. No, don't get excited. Okay. This white boy cannot jump.
Until 11th grade.
Wow, you got it in 11th grade, Ty? Tyler,
got it. The whole neighborhood knew about it, Ty.
Yeah. That moment, that's the moment I'm talking about. It's after you got hung on the rim like 50 times, your fingers, you got the metal in it. But that moment, and it's like the best moment. You're not even playing against anyone. It's just the part of the sport to finally accomplish this kind of unachievable, this rare air above the rim type of group of guys. I went up to a basketball camp. I was going to the Syracuse basketball camp. I was 13 years old. I started dunking at 13, and they kind of put you by age groups, right? And so I was in the younger age group, and the very first play, I won the tip. The guy gave it back to me. I took 2 dribbles and I dunked it. Later that night, I hear a knock at my door, and I'm like, "Listen," and he says, "Son, it's Coach." And I'm just like, "Well, whoever. I don't believe it." And I kept back flipping off a bed or something stupid. They knocked again. And they go, and I opened the door. Who the hell is it? And it's actually Jimmy Boeheim and his assistant, Bernie. And he goes, "Look, son, we talked about you and the group and the camp. We think it's a little bit unfair, your size. You would learn more by moving you up." So they moved me up to the older group. So the next day, I win the tip again. The guy passes it back to me. I dunk on everyone on the other side. Like literally they're all collapsing in. It was a 2-hand dunk. And coach is there along with all the other coaches. And I walk by him. Like I literally, like this is how crazy arrogant I was back then. I don't run by him. I walk by him. I go, "Hey coach, is there an older age group than this?" So it's a little bit about the trash talking. It's a little bit about the swagger, but ultimately what it really builds is confidence. Mm-hmm. The work builds confidence, just like at work. The working through COVID, the working as a team collectively, the working through the tough times and now winning, and we're having a record year. All that stuff just builds confidence, and that's all sports is. I mean, I watch my youngest daughter, who's probably the best athlete of us all. She probably could go D1 in basketball or track if she so chose. I think she'll probably pick to go to a better school maybe than in a lower division of basketball. But when I watch her, I see the differences. It's just confidence. Like if she had more confidence in her day in, day out activity, I don't see how anyone can physically stop her. I mean, she could touch the rim. I mean, she's athletic. And she has a good skill set, and but it's about the confidence. But sports are amazing in regards to teamwork and rooting for your team. I've been more excited sitting on the bench and seeing someone who wasn't normally playing score their first basket. Mm-hmm. Those are the things that sports give you that no other sport can. And then just being a fanatic. I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about your teams, but that moment, and that moment is just like the best moment when you finally succeed or win or get to the mountaintop. Mm-hmm. Like you said, those Razorbacks, like that moment had to be. I remember being in Boston when I think Boston College made the Final Four in basketball, but it was on a game-winning shot, and I just remember the entire city of Boston yell. I mean, I've never heard anything like that. Like you heard the whole city roar and cheer. I go, man, that's what I want. Like, that's the feeling I want every day. I have lunch with the new hires every we bring in new hires every 2 weeks. And I just came from a lunch with them. And it's just that moment when you look across the table and you're just thinking, man, I just feel like I just signed Shaq and Kobe and all the best players on my team right now. I feel like I'm the Lakers right now. I got Antonio Davis, I got Carmelo Anthony, I got LeBron, I got everyone on my squad right now. That's what you want to feel like every day when you walk in and you see your new hires jumping onto your team, and that's what we're kind of building here.
Golly, this is awesome, Ty. I really thank you for doing this with us. You're getting me all fired up in this Petco parking lot here. Well, you keep mentioning confidence. You know, I used to love rooting for the Thundering Third too, when the third stringers got in and the guy scored the bucket that, you know, just you wear his butt out all day, all year in practice. But I wanted to ask you two questions. How do you work on building that confidence? And for two, what was the biggest whooping you ever took in sports? Who was the guy who worked you all day long that you really learned a little humility from?
Yeah, I'll give you both. Yeah. So the first thing is you got to focus on what you're good at, right? Seriously, you know, if you grow up in New York, it's all about handle, dribbling, getting to the lane. But when you go out like Baltimore, you go out to Chicago, it's about the jump shot and other skill sets. So don't try to be something else or someone else. Like, you know, I think one of the first mistakes I watch people do, especially when they become CEOs, they start trying to be this other person in this other role. You got to the job for a reason. You're good at certain things for a reason. You're bad at certain things for a reason. So stick with what you're good at. So that's the first thing, you know, when it came to confidence as a leader. I just kept doing what I'm really good at. And what I'm really good at is with people. I love being around people. I get energy from people. I love developing people. I love coaching people. There's literally people who just fly in right now and hang out at my house for the weekend or the week, and then they come up and they shadow me at work. And it has very little. They didn't work for me. They just know my brand. They know what I'm carrying around the room. But 9 times out of 10, when I walk in the room, you can sense that whatever that is, that confidence in self. I think I just realized pretty young and pretty quickly, no one can be better at me than me, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to stick with that, right? This is a car that got me here. I'm going to keep riding until the wheels come off on this bad boy. And I'm just going to keep rolling with that, you know, until I get through it. But whoopings, I'll give you a couple whoopings, and I'll give you work and I'll give you sports. So the first one, I would say, there's 2 guys who always gave it to me, gave me the business, and I don't know why. Neither of them are better than me, but they just have my number. And one's this guy named Jeff Woods, who would love to hear this podcast later. You know, he's that guy. You know,
hey Jeff, we're coming for you. No,
yeah, he's that guy who he's a year older than me. You know, he was getting me a scholarship to go up to URI with him. He was at URI and wanted me to come up there, but I didn't want to go there because I was always second to him, and I'm no one better than him, but he just always beats me. And Jeff, he's also that guy that, you know, when I turned 50, or maybe when I turned 49, like the day after, he sent me a picture of him on the podium in first and me in second.
Oh my gosh. Oh man, driving that point home.
Yeah, well, he didn't say anything in the comment. He just sent it to me. Hey, I found this great picture of us, you know. So he always had my number. And I think my wife would probably say it was just mental. He had me beat before I got there. Another guy was a guy named Jimmy Rogers. We played the same team. He was 6'7". He went D3. I got D2 and D1 offers, but he just, I don't know. He just, in basketball, just gave me the business. He was bigger, longer, stronger, and just regularly gave me the business when we played. You know, it's just funny how that is. But for me, it was work. I was, and work-wise, the moment for me, I was working at PricewaterhouseCoopers. I was in Boston. This guy, he was my supervisor named Dan, came in and he was just talking to me. And after a while, he was kind of just talking to me about confidence, ego, id, and any strength overplayed becomes a weakness. Does that make sense? Like, so if you're confident, if it gets overplayed, you seem cocky, right? Yeah. And he was just trying to tell me in general, like, you have a big personality, you have big everything. If you can find a way to use that to your advantage, and you know you're a really funny guy, you can find a way to leverage that in a manner that makes everyone laugh with you versus you're laughing at someone. You know, and maybe change the focus of that conversation to be like you're the end of that joke every time, even if they were really the end of the joke. Always flip it. And at the time, I was kind of like, man, this guy's just hating on me. Like, you know, like, we could tell him to be like, I grew up with Muhammad Ali, I'm the greatest, you know, and he was trying to tell me to kind of be something different. But as I kind of moved up the company, I kept following him. I started realizing what he was saying was like, look, you already won the game. There's no reason to kind of yell about the scoreboard.
Mhm.
Goes, but what you can do is help others cross the finish line too. Like if you're in the Boston Marathon, the people who come through the finish line at the end way later are the people are clapping for the loudest and the hardest. It's not about necessarily that awesome Kenyan who winds up winning the race every year, but it winds up to be that connectivity of the effort and celebrating the effort and celebrating how everyone's contributing. And so for me, that was humbling, to go from like I knew I was the man to going, all right, but you're not the man unless you're making everyone else better. And that became a really big thing for me. But in the beginning, it definitely hurt my stride and pride a little bit that, I've been the captain of every team I've been on. I've always thought I've been a great leader, but to kind of hear someone who's kind of questioning that leadership fault, he's like, it's like, he's really kind of focusing on that one area of fault to saying, you're not winning unless everyone's winning, always. And that was like my aha moment. I was probably 21, 22. I was, still in Similac basically. And and it just meant the world to me. And I someone else had just recently asked me about that moment. And that was my moment, that none of this means anything if I can't help everyone else win. And that's when it became more fun. But it goes back to that team sport thing, when track and field, you win your own individual event. And I won many of them. But nothing was sweeter than when we won our conference championships at university or in high school. So that's where it's at.
And you touched on almost like overcoming your fear, right? To really get to that real work, the ego work, because like you pointed out too, Ty, is there is a fine line between confidence and just self love, and then it becomes an issue. How do you, as a CEO, continue to check your ego on a daily basis? Like, where do you find your power in leadership? You mentioned some of the pillars that you found to success from other books and other mentors. What has Ty defined as, I guess, your personal mission statement?
Yeah, for me, my goal is that everyone that comes across in my life, that I help them reach the best version of themselves. So I think of that in everything I do. If you think about it, it all comes from the beginning of serving. Serving is the real reward. That's the differentiator. That's the real opportunity. Your ability to serve in any capacity on this earth while you're walking on it. And we get this life once, so you may as well live it to its fullest. And for me, living it to its fullest is helping as many people as I can. So for me, servant leadership is just the only way to operate, that I always start people first. People first being my membership or customer base, people first being my employees, people first being my own family. One of the things I always laugh at, you ever, I don't know, Kev, do you have family? You have kids?
I just had a son. So when you said Similac, I was like, I know those bottles all too often, Ty.
All right. So here's something I want you to think about. And you're going to see this in your own life. So you're at your house later, someone brings over their kid's 5 years old, he's running around the house, and he inadvertently hits this vase and your furniture falls over and it breaks. First thing you say is what? Oh, don't worry about it, right? Like, no worries, it's just a vase, we'll clean it up. Now, go back to your own kid. Your own kid's 5 years. For 5 years, that kid's run around, never broke this vase. Finally breaks that vase, and you yell at them. Like, what are you doing? You gotta be more careful. Why do we treat strangers better than we do our family? Like, you got to start asking yourself those type of questions. Like, why are we so short with our family when they make the same mistakes that we would be like, oh, don't worry about it, if it was a friend or a coworker?
I noticed that with my wife too. Same
yeah,
thing. Same exact thing. Yeah,
all the time. And it was that realization that, in holding yourself super accountable, looking at yourself in the mirror and going, man, I got to do better. I'm a better dad with my second kid than my first kid. I walked in the house the other day, and we were about to, it was really like 2 days before we went on vacation, and my daughters were sitting there with my wife, and they were like staring at her. I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, we asked mom to use 3 words to describe each of us if she's struggling. And they said, but can you? And I just gave them my 3 words, and they're like you're really spot on, they thought. And they gave me theirs, and it was pretty similar. And there were things I was really, really proud of myself. So I didn't even realize that they noticed that about me. So I think that's where it comes from. It's just, I believe that I can learn something from every single person I come across.
Me too.
Whether it's the homeless guy on the street, whether it's the waitress at the diner up the road, whether it's the guy who's cleaning the windows and doors of our offices every day during COVID. I just know there's something they know that I can learn from. And I want to make sure I'm open to hearing it. I don't like making mistakes. I don't think anyone likes making mistakes. But the one thing I'm proud of is that when I do make a mistake and I acknowledge I make a mistake, it makes me proud because I realize that I'm still open. I'm still able and willing to acknowledge and notice that I'm not perfect. I'm not, just because I'm the boss doesn't mean I'm right, you know?
Yeah.
And it means I'm learning something new. So I'm pretty proud of that. I think that's really important.
Well, I think that's given Visions that competitive advantage because I think that you empower, you coach, right? Back to the training or sports analogy is that if you're not coaching them and they can't like do it without you being in the room, then what's the point? And I know that's been like your definitive competitive advantage in that market, not only in the Southern tier, but also beyond that. And I think that you are inspiring because your mission as Visions FCU is to best serve your customer base. By doing so, you're taking care of your employees so they can do that on a daily basis. One of the things you mentioned in today's interview, but also your other podcast, Ty, and I don't want to miss out on the opportunity to ask you this question because I think a lot of people have gone through the same evolution during the pandemic. And I went through my evolution because I was surrounded myself with other people that pulled out and told me my strengths. Like your daughters were asking their one words. You talked about it in the other podcast that you were on, and I wanted to ask you about it today. How important is that? Because a lot of people are soul searching right now, right? It can be daunting to try to find yourself. I have found it more beneficial with friends like Tyler to help me find my strengths and identify what makes me unique and different. Do you want to touch on that? Because I know you said that was a key contribution to your success as well.
Yeah, I think COVID was, if you remember, I'm an extrovert, right, Kevin? Like, I get my energy from people. It was a real tough time to go through COVID, just like everyone else, and you're kind of isolated. I kind of did the same mistake I think most CEOs did. When COVID came, I really doubled down. I didn't leave the office. I worked harder, didn't take vacation, and just grinded out. And then I got to the end of the year and I had nothing. My tank was empty, right? My creativity was gone. And I think that's what we do, right? We try to double down on what we're doing, and instead, that's when you actually need to let go more. Right? It's almost counterintuitive, right? It's like when you're driving with a trailer, you have to do everything in reverse of what you would normally do to make the trailer go what you want to do.
Yeah.
And after a while, it becomes normal. After you've been there for a while. So for me, during COVID, I just realized ultimately that I had to rely on my team. I had to rely on others. I had to give them permission to be weak around me as well as I need to be weak around them. And that actually is a strength, right? I think sometimes in the era that we grew up in and we were raised in, that sometimes we confuse the two. But being vulnerable is probably one of your greatest strengths if you could do it at the right moment to connect. For me, I actually had lost a nephew during COVID from a drug overdose. It's funny because it's very odd because if there was no COVID, he probably would have been with someone instead of in a room by himself. And I remember the time that I was somewhat relieved for him because, he literally passed away eating Skittles and watching TV,
Yeah.
And you started sitting there thinking about, one of the things you start talking about in leadership is your legacy, right? And I've often tried to avoid legacy. How they talk about you on your 80th birthday, type of scenarios. But I do think that you want to be that person that the stories are told about the times you suddenly were there when they didn't expect you, or how you always seem to timely have the right story or joke at the right time, or check in on them at the right time, or the little call you made for them to help them get the job that they weren't supposed to know about, that they found about later.
Yeah.
So I think those are all the little things. I'm famous for literally just stopping into random shops and stores, just talking to them. They have no clue who I am. I find out what their problem is, and then I try to solve their problem for them. And later, 3, 4, 5 years later, you'll see some type of weird post about like these tie stories. I had a former employee text me this morning saying that he's out in Idaho, and they're sharing tie stories. And that's where it's really, that's the real richness, right?
Yeah.
That's the tapestry of this leadership game. And that's what makes you proud when you're sitting there.
Yeah.
That you want to be full of all these unique little stories, and not for story's sake, but because you're really there trying to solve a problem at the time.
Yeah.
But
and I think you being vulnerable, right? You learn of a lot of CEOs, and it's a tough position to be in, right? I mean, you're there to serve the employees, you're there to drive the business, and you being on the finance side, I find it even more not comical, but ironic, right? Finance people are not the feel good people. Typically, they like things black and white, right? It's like, nope, this is what it is. And I think that you've identified it, but I think the ability to tap in for organizations to tap into their innovation or creativity of their own people is to admit that they don't know everything, right? To show that vulnerability. And sometimes CEOs say it's a form of weakness, right? We're trying to act confident, but during the pandemic, when shit's going south, we can't act like shit's going south. We have to say everything's fine, even though right behind me there's a five alarm fire. But it doesn't sounds like you're one of those people, Ty, and I know this for a fact that you are, is that you get out of the ivory tower. You go and sit down with your people in the call center to understand what they're going through on a daily basis. How much better of a leader has it helped you to get out in the community and build and maintain these relationships, like you said, with these new hires? How much better has that made you or a well-rounded leader?
I think that's really the secret sauce. It's hard, right? Because you don't think you've changed, but you've changed, right? They see you different. So that's the change. That, when I was a CFO, I was still being a leader. I wasn't the CEO, but people looked at me like the CEO. So you just start, but it started with my ability to connect with people and listen to people and really get to the root of what they're trying to say. That's a skill set too, right? Being able to hear what they're really saying. How many times do you find that people are having a problem articulating why they're unhappy? Well, when you can listen to it and you can help pinpoint it, that's the real gift. But I think that that's really just the root of confidence, though. Still, no matter when you get to it, Kevin, if you're not confident, you can't afford the space to show people that you don't understand something. Or, there's times, we're going to war. I don't think it's the best time to be like, oh my God, guys, I don't know what we're gonna do. That's the one time you might have to fake it till you make it. Like we're gonna win this, like, because they need to know that you're gonna win this. But when you have the ability to show that vulnerability or team style, I think it's worthwhile. I think sometimes I feel like, in general, I feel like I have 90% of the solution or accuracy of being right. So someone might have a problem that comes in this either a little bit better or a little bit worse. I always say let follow their solution. Because they'll own it, and so it's really owning up. One of the books I'm reading right now is called Extreme Ownership. It's about like Navy SEALs and how they finish a mission, and then after that, no matter what their rank is, they all criticize each other or what was the opportunity to be better. And I think that's really interesting, regardless of the level in that troop, that squad, that they're all equally accountable. And I just thought, how do you build that? It's a hard thing to manage through, especially when we were going through this culture change. I'd walk into a meeting and say, okay, what are we going to do? And everyone would stop and just stare at me because they're waiting for me to tell them what we were going to do.
Wow.
Because that's the way my predecessor had to work for himself. And it probably worked really well, but it wouldn't work now in this era, right?
No.
And I think that was, one of those moments where you're just sitting there like, well, how do I get them comfortable? Like, so you have to think, right? You're saying, okay, I want an innovative culture. Well, then you can't be punitive when we fail, right? So sometimes you have to figure out, well, what happens when this happens? So I'll give you one example. We had something kind of go bad. It was in regard to a loan. it was really bad news. It was just like, man, like we had like 3 opportunities to avoid the situation, and then we kind of failed on. And the leadership, the senior VP and the VP, set up a meeting to walk me through it. Inside I was, I was kind of mad or
Yeah,
upset.
of course.
And they left, and then about 15 minutes later, I walked in my office and I found each of them to thank them for telling me. So I thought about it, because I didn't want them to, if you're really upset at them whenever they tell you something bad, you're kind of saying, don't tell me anything bad, right?
Exactly.
So how do you get that environment that they're as quickly going to tell you something good as they're going to tell you something bad? And
safety, psychological safety. Yeah.
Yeah. And how do you remain consistent, right? That's the other thing that's really hard for your staff. If you come in really happy, the next day you come in really sad.
Yeah.
But I really try to stay in one level all the time with them. But for me, I think it really surprised them that I went and I found both, and I thanked them for telling me really bad news. But
yeah. Do you feel like that's the only way that you can get better, though?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I do. But for me, I would say, I don't know that I failed, but I felt that I missed an opportunity when they left. And that's why I went and sought them out. Because I was just inside, just thinking about all these other things, thinking about how is it going to affect me? How am I going to tell my board? How am I going to, like, the income bottom line, and having to report that and show the impact, and my results not being where I was, and we're so close to having a record year. And then I thought about it, none of those things were important. What was important is 2 of my leaders found out their team didn't do something they wanted. They had the opportunity to fix it. They're quantifying it, but it's bad news, and we're going to have an impact, but we can make sure this won't happen again. And that was the real story. Like, I didn't have to seek them out. They sought me out to let me know. And they should be applauded and rewarded as equally as if they walked in and told me some really good news. It's hard to do, though, in the moment.
Yeah.
In the moment, you're kind of like, you can't help but be human. But give yourself that 3 count and then try to get back in there.
That's powerful. All right. Yeah. Well, I got one question as we're wrapping up here. You mentioned, right? We want to learn. Actually, I got 2 more questions. We'll make them quick. But everybody kind of puts the CEO, and I know your life is pretty much out there. Your employees know that you have your daughters, and your family is very important to you, and you enjoy vacations, but you also enjoy delivering for them, right? You guys have messages around your building about innovation, about creativity, about speaking up, right? But everybody wants to know a little personal something about their CEO. What is, I know you have a book idea in your head. If you were to write a book, Ty, what is the book going to be about, and what would the title be?
Well, I'll tell you, a lot of people have asked me to write a leadership book. I just feel like there's so many out there that I've chosen not to do it, even though I get regularly requested by writers as well as other leaders to do or contribute to one. But the book, I think, is inside of me is Dear Daughter. I've always wanted to write a book to my daughters about being a dad. And as you go through, you'll see this now for yourself. There's so many times you're going to fail, and you just want them to understand what was on your mind at the time. And it's just that moment of just saying, look, I'm your dad, but here are all the things that are why you're great. And it's also just seeing so many kids who don't have that father figure that I've kind of felt the void for them. That I just think that it'd be good for them to hear all the things that I hear in the back of my head that my parents told me. Remember I told you they lied to me and told me I could do anything, and I believed them. Well, these kids don't have that. And I want to make sure, I was originally thinking I'd write the book for them. But then I started realizing so many other females, and as a person who advocates for women in particular, could use that. They could use that voice, just reminding them why they're fantastic and they're great and they're leaders. And They should be bosses, and they should
Oh yeah.
renegotiate their contracts.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They should,
I'll
be
sit on that
needed.
soapbox with you, Ty, all
Yeah.
day, because I just think that equity, that DE&I that
Yeah.
everybody's chasing, you can't start without equity first, that we can even
Yep.
pay men and women the exact same.
It's
Last question
funny.
for you. Everybody knows everything about Ty, probably their Visions, right? But what is one thing that they do not know about Ty?
I can't sing, not a lick. I can't hold a tune. I can dance. I can move. I'm blessed with almost every other feature, man. But whatever reason, God decided that was the one that He wouldn't give me. And the funniest part is, I just love music. And
Yeah.
I mean, I sing so poorly that when I'm singing by myself in the car, sometimes I stop because I'm like, I had an opportunity this summer to kind of, again, as I told you, I'm trying to meet more of my idols. So I got to golf with Chris Tucker, and
Oh my gosh, how cool is that?
that was really cool. And then, because I believe comedians, how they capture a room so quickly and connect and communicate. It's a skill set that I think you could use as a leader. And then Cool in the Gang, So I've been kind of living a great summer of dreams this year, starting with the Dr. J first and kind of working my way through.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. And Tyler and I are learning so much. He had to drop off because he was continuing that trip from Batavia. He was like, let Ty know he's like the coolest guy I've met yet.
No worries,
that's
man.
what we've learned from this podcast and from great leadership like yourself. It's like, you don't have to lead. You don't have to be a leader by title, right? You can lead your own life. You can lead your family. And when leadership gets better, our communities get better at the same time. And I think sometimes people wait to be leaders until they're given that title, but it's something that you've carried along since the track and field days and on the basketball court. Tyler and I just really wanted to thank you, Ty, for accepting to be on this show with us.
Of course.
You're one of those, like I said, those near and dear mentors of mine from the Southern Tier, just seeing somebody that brought in a new perspective of what leadership and what a role of a CEO could be and how to really empower the rest of their employees to get behind that mission, and really lead to some innovative things, but also enable their success, whatever their true definition of success is. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show with us today.
Hey, I'm super proud of you. In a quick passing, you were memorable. And I applaud you. I'm excited that you are having these discussions. It's really, really important that we share. As I said, that's really the real gift, right? Life isn't meant to be kind of kept in a box. You should be sharing this knowledge. And you made it super fun. I love the format. I can't wait to listen to all your other podcasts in the future. I'm wishing you continued success and all the following in the world. Followership is big, so keep doing what you're doing. I'm really proud of you.
Thank you, Ty. I appreciate it. And next time Tyler and White and I are traveling through Binghamton, we know exactly who we're taking out for some speedies. So
sounds great. Looking forward to it. Absolutely.
Appreciate it, Ty. You have a great day, and thanks again for being on the show.
All right. Take it easy.